Football Then and Now, a fun look at football nostalgia and the modern game intertwined. Join us.
A warm welcome. This is episode 47 of Football Then and Now, a nostalgic look at football, and we also look at current topics and the latest news on the show. Joining me is my cousin and co-host Chris Hume, and we are back for episode 47, Chris, of course. And we've got on this date in football history, although we don't know when this episode's dropping, so it's almost like on this week in football history with this one.
Yeah, I'd say so.
You have found one that is known in football folklore, of course. A lot of people will know this one, and take it away, man.
Well, obviously, you say to me, don't you, to pick, and on this day in history, there was, there was a couple of good ones. I think we missed the day before we did the last one. It was Fulham Juventus when Fulham knocked out Juventus in the UEFA Cup, which would have been a great one to get, but obviously we didn't do it on that day. But looking through for this one, I know this one is obviously happened on the 20th of March, and when this goes out, I'm assuming it'll be after the 20th of March. So to the future people watching this, the reason for it is it was such a good story to pick. And I've said to you, didn't I, Stuart, off air, that I couldn't not pick this one. Because as you say, it's folklore, and when is the World Cup being stolen? It has to be in the UK. You know what I mean? And it's madness. But you know what, Stuart, I've been looking at it, and I've been looking at the ransom notes and stuff, and it was the ransom note was received at Chelsea Football Club, funny enough, and they only demanded £15,000. The thieves of the World Cup at the time, £15,000. That's all they wanted back then. And they wanted it in £1 and £5 notes, which is mad because I don't recall we ever had a £1 note in this country ever. £1. I'm always thinking £1's always been a coin. It's never been a note, right? So apparently, reading again onto it, they said they filmed back later on, Stuart, and changed it. Could they have it to a £5 and a £10 note? Yeah, do you know what I mean? You're going to rob it. You make sure you know what you want. But you looking now, if you robbed the World Cup, you'd be asking for more than 15 grand for it. It's a ransom. But they threatened to melt it down if they didn't get the money. But obviously that didn't happen. Scotland Yard, I think they said something like the Flying Squad, which don't ask me what they are, but they managed to, I think just after the 24th of March, they found this person who was called Jackson, who was the one who was phoning up and putting out the ransom. And they were doing it all through Chelsea Football Club, which, makes a lot of sense going this day forward now with all the bad crap going on. And that's a joke to Chelsea fans. But yeah, they found it. Then it was an unmarked car. Yeah. And the person who was called Jackson ended up being, I'm sorry about his name now, is Edward, straight like this, Edward Belchley.
Sounds very prim and proper, that surname, mate. I've got to be honest with you. That sign of the times, that definitely. What about the most famous dog in all this, though?
Oh, don't you worry about that, Stuart. The dog was called Pickles.
Big Pickles, the dog. I've even got a photo, Chris. Sorry, I'm jumping in.
No.
Here he is, probably the most famous dog in the history of sport, I'm going to say. And we've had dogs on football pitches before now running around, stopping a game. But this dog, I know you can have more to say about it, but I had to bring the graphic in of Pickles, mate, because you all knew about Pickles after hearing this story when we were younger.
Well, it was Pickles that eventually found the cup itself. From reading, it was found in a hedge in David Corbett, who owned the Pickles the dog. They found the parcel in Corbett's house under not in his house, but under the hedge of his house. And obviously he handed that then to the police, and there you go. The cup was returned, I think, roughly around the 18th of April.
Well, it's a month. It's like, 29 days, 31 days in March. Bloody hell. It was under siege for 29 days, mate. That sort of thing just wouldn't happen now. With obviously,
the cup's a lot bigger than
all forensics and how it is.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But the cup's a much bigger than that. But you could run away with the old World Cup. You couldn't so much now.
And at least, Bobby Moore could, get it aloft after, months later, and they didn't have to sort something else out.
No wonder we've never had the World Cup back in this country. Don't forget all the fans fighting with each other. Yeah. We're more afraid that we're going to rob the bloody cup from them again.
Definitely. Great. Again, like last week's about Sir Stanley Matthews. This is brilliant. Again, great. Just brilliant history. Fantastic. When you hit it right, it's just the day we do it, isn't it? Some weeks you're like, I'm really struggling here. And then, there's always stuff in football history. So yeah, great. And the cup was retrieved and all was well in that summer for the tournament.
He's still waiting for that £1 note, I think.
Yeah, I wonder what £15,000 would be now in today's money, 2025 inflation. That I might have to put that into the inflation calculator.
I think
we need to see. We need to see what it'd be today, definitely. But yeah, fantastic segment. You'll be back with it next week for episode 48 as well. Fantastic, absolutely brilliant. We are doing a nostalgic episode today. We've had this in the pipeline for a while now, haven't we, Chris?
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. We used to love the Champions League as much as Everton weren't qualifying. We got to the Cup Winners' Cup in '95, didn't we? Didn't go too well. So we were watching the teams, weren't we? We were watching United, Blackburn when they got into it. It was on ITV. So we watched these games, didn't we? And we watched the games intently. And we've pulled up a few fixtures. Big fixtures from the tournament, of course. What would you like to start with? Obviously, you've got Liverpool and Barca in the second leg, the comeback. You've also got from 2004, Deportivo 4 against AC Milan 0 as well. So the floor is yours. Which article you'd like to do first?
We'll do yours. One of yours first.
Do you want to do Juve and United? Yeah.
Yeah.
Semi-final second leg from 1999, of course. And yeah, what a game this was. And obviously, the first leg, it was 1-1 at Old Trafford. A lot of people were writing off United going to the Stadio do Alpi. Just Juventus's form in the tournament years prior and things like that. People were giving them not a cat and hell's chance of getting through this. They go 2-0 down. Filippo Inzaghi with 2 early goals. It just looks like it's gone to the dogs, doesn't it, at this point? And lo and behold, they come back with a hell of a comeback. Roy Keane's glancing header. And then he gets carded. There was actually 12 players on 1 yellow card for both teams. So that meant that if they picked up another card, they were banned for the final 12 players. If they'd been, if they'd picked up a second yellow, it's crazy. I was just looking at some facts and things. I never knew that until I was digging. But what a game, Chris. What a fantastic game this was. And what are your memories? I'm going to ask you about your memories of it.
Straight away, we mentioned this when you brought this up, Stuart. Was I loved the Juventus the home kit they had, the Kappa. I know, and they had Sony, didn't they, as the main sponsor in the middle. I know that's not anything football related, but I love that kit from Juventus, by the way, Stuart. And I also got to say, you mentioned Filippo Inzaghi, and you look at this is 1999, so he's relatively younger, obviously back then. Hasn't he had an amazing career? I mean, you look at Filippo Inzaghi and the clubs he's played for in Italy. His name's pretty much cemented in that country, pretty much for every club he's played for. I just think he's an astute standout of a striker. And again, there's another name you don't hear enough about.
We touch upon this on this show. We've talked about underappreciated players since we started the show last February in 2024. Yeah. I would say, as prolific as he was, does not get the props. Just I'll be honest with what you're saying. He should be held in higher esteem. There's no question. He consistently did it year in, year out, banging goals in. And those two goals were brilliant. For the second one, and we know how good Jaap Stam was at the back, and he absolutely sold Jaap Stam down the river for that second goal. And you just felt at that point they had the away goal, and it was them 3-1. They were 3-1 up, and nobody saw the turnaround from United. I guarantee that. I guarantee it. I just felt they're going out. The Juventus are off to the final again because they've been so good getting to finals in this, haven't they? In the more recent times around this game.
Look at the team, Stuart, that Juventus had in '99, and they had. I'd say almost at his peak, Zuzou, didn't they? Who back then for Juventus and especially in Serie A ran the show, didn't he? Ran the show in that centre. You had Del Piero. He's pretty much. He was still young then as well, wasn't he? So you know what I mean. He was making a name for himself, and obviously Flippo was there, and obviously, like we just said, then discussed, he scores hatful of goals everywhere he goes, and they were solid at the back. Was it? Sure, Thuram was there, wasn't he? At the time, I think obviously Buffon was there. That was the most expensive.
Chiro Ferreira. I'll talk.
Ferreira,
I'll talk about names underappreciated. What a player he was. Attacking Hardy, another one, because he had so many nicknames, big names, established names. But Chiro Ferreira was an absolute. Not enough gets spoken about him because he was brilliant at the back. Again, there was that tournament back then. To me, I like it now and all the rest of it. It just felt majestic those nights in the 90s. I stand by that.
Games were better then than they
it was
are
just
now.
It was just, and people prior to us can say football was better in the 80s, and you have all this, don't you? And then
and so on and so on.
It's always the way. It's always the young kids now. They're like, the 90s wasn't better than now. Again, it was just underappreciated players for Juve at the time.
Did the graph.
It was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable squad, as you say. Sorry.
No, and actually, why we're here and we're talking about this and we're talking about the 90s and stuff like that, when you look at the Champions League, and from what I remembered, best teams played the best, right? So the winners played the winners, but each team, won their league and played in this competition. They all had solid squads, Stuart. There wasn't a team that was there that was weaker than the other. This was 99 was one of the United's probably best teams of all time. In let's say in the last couple of decades, this was one of their best teams. And they struggled against Juventus. Obviously, I know they turned out and won it, but they played Juventus a fair few times before this one and lost to Juventus. And it showed you the strength that Italian football was in the late 90s. Obviously, things have changed now. We do see Juve in there, but they're a very former shell of themselves. Because obviously, again, I'm going back to what we spoke about last week with the World Club Championship. It's the money, isn't it? Italian football needs the money and needs the investment. You're seeing clubs fall behind a lot more now in the European competitions than they were back when we were younger watching it.
It cycles. It goes in cycles. This as well. Like you'll go around Europe, and there'll be a country within Europe that are do amazingly well in the Champions League, and to a lesser extent Europa League, Conference League. It does this. It's cyclical. I think it's very cyclical in that sense. It's just. They were so good. They were so good. Peruzzi in goal. We've obviously put the graphic up there of Michael Keane. Nearly called him then. Although he's got an eye for goal, Michael Keane.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Roy Keane. But
I don't think Roy would be liking him. You just said that, Stuart.
No, he won't be very happy with me, mate. And he's a man you don't want to get on the wrong side of. He's a cantankerous. He's a cantankerous man, but comedic in the same token. But yeah. Just obviously, Roy Keane was then banned for the final just to extend, and Paul Scholes was banned for the final in Bayern. Two huge players, And I think, but Bayern, if memory serves, I think Bayern were the bookies' favourites going into the final at the Nou Camp that year. So they had it all. They had it all to do, didn't they? And they came out on top. The substitutions,
Solskjaer, Sheringham,
amazing. And that's not. I'm not taking away from Jesper Blomqvist. He had to go in there and do a job in that game. He played well. That was again. They turned it around, didn't they? It was their year. It was set. It was in the stars. It was in the stars, wasn't it? Almost.
Yeah, you can always go back to that final, and I don't know what it is, because obviously we're not United fans, but that final against Bayern, it's sort of recorded in your head. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, of course.
It's like it's recorded in your head. So when you're talking about it, then I can visualize it in my head immediately. And what you're talking about, it's like it's playing in my head. It's one of those games because of what United achieved that year, which, if you think about it, back then it's really unthinkable to win as much as they did. Obviously now it's different, but they overcome so much in that season to become champions, to become Champions League, to win a treble. But it as you say, it's losing two big players in Scholesy and Keane. And and they're both the central midfielders, and they're both the ones that they can rely on. Scholes for the passing, and Keane for the defensive midfield. But then Roy Keane could pass a ball as well. But he's saying Jasper Blomqvist. And I obviously remember him at Everton, but this was after a long injury layoff, and obviously wasn't the same player. But he did a bloody good job for United in that game. But like I say, going back to it, it's stuck in your head because it just stood out. And, not supporting United, you still had to cheer for them when they beat Bayern because they really had to get stuck in. They had to stay in the game. And I think a last-minute goal, as we've seen when Tarky scored against Liverpool, I think it blows the roof off. And Solskjaer and Teddy Sheringham, and never two-striker Stewart, who I think are very underrated and don't get shouted out enough, especially Teddy Sheringham. They're just right place, right time. And they were always those type of strikers, weren't they, Teddy Sheringham and Solskjaer? Were always at the right place, right time. And, that's changed, I think, English football forever, that 99 game, if I'm honest with you. I think that's where you saw the boom of the Premier League really rocket up then.
It really did set the tone, because look at the years of dominance and how many times the Champions League was won by an English club. Yeah, definitely. It lit the touch paper. It definitely did. And, they were, until Barcelona came in and they were dominant, weren't they? The tactics and the pep were just unreal. Everyone was trying to work out how to play against it. It took years for teams to realise how to play against Pep, as we've seen this season. But prior to that, it was dominant. The English teams were dominant for so many years, and the Premier League's profile rose. And we've spoken about that. In the early 90s, it was slow burn, wasn't it? Italy was still probably considered the best league in the early 90s. Brilliant. Which one would you like to speak about next?
Right, well, we'll stick with the Italian theme. And I want to go with Deportivo La Coruña versus Milan. This one stands out for me, Stuart. And just because it's not the goals that Fran and Luque scored for them. It's what they had to overcome. Just like you're saying, United had to come back from 2-0 down to beat, Bayern 3-2. Deportivo had to come back, from 4. I know they got the one away goal at the San Siro. Is it Palladani?
Walter Pandiani.
Yes, he played for Birmingham and was absolutely terrible. But I've got the team for both teams that played. The players that are on the pitch at the time, and you're looking at players. I think look at AC Milan here for Stuart, stood out. Maldini, you got Nesta, Cafu, Pirlo, Gattuso, Seedorf, Kaká, Yondal Thomason when he was prolific at AC Milan, and a Shevchenko. And you go to, if you say that them players, anybody, they would tell you how amazing that squad was for Milan. But in this game, it just, I don't know. I just think that the Deportivo in this game, Stuart, just changed. It turned into a will beater, and everything they were touching in this game was just frightening AC Milan. And then, again, I just named you the standout players for AC Milan, and don't forget they played all those players played in both games, but a different team turned up in Spain. And you look. I'll tell you the team that Deportivo had, and then standouts to me were always like, Luque was always a fantastic player. Capdevila Stewart, fantastic left back. Mario Silva, he stood out quite well in La Liga. Sergio Gonzalez, I always thought he was fantastic for Deportivo. These are the players that you look at compared to Milan, who had Inzaghi on the bench, Stuart. They had Sergio on the bench, Costa Curta, Rui Costa.
Diego Tristan for Deportivo. Oh, sorry to jump in. Diego Tristan was on the bench. And Roy Mackay was long gone. They always had. Yeah. They always had a striker. Roy Mackay scored a lot of goals in the Champions League, as did Pandiani, of course. But Tristan's got the most goals in Champions League football for Deportivo. 15 goals. 15 goals. They always had the players, and the Riazor was such a hard place to go at that time. I always remember it because I used to watch La Liga with you at your house. The Riazor was a tough place to go back then. It was very hard to get anything there.
They were solid back in the early thousands. I think even in the 90s, you like 98 to about, we'll go with about 2011, 2010, where the drop off happened, and I think money again hurt Deportivo because again I think they took chances on players, didn't work out, and they spent a lot of money, and obviously we know what goes after that. But this team, your comparison against an all-star squad, we just talked about Filippo Inzaghi for Juventus in '99. This isn't too far away, after '99, and they've got Filippo on the bench. But Jon Dahl Tomasson in 2004 was a monster. And him and Shevchenko were fantastic together. But, you're lonely Deportivo. You're in a league with Real Madrid, Barcelona, who get all the attention. And, you get that priceless away goal at the San Siro. You take them to Spain. And not only did you overturn it, excuse me, they absolutely wiped the floor with AC Milan, and it was such an amazing time to watch. I was so dedicated in watching La Liga at the time that I've had to support Deportivo because they do fantastic.
They had two quarterfinals. 2000, 2001, 2002 quarterfinals. Second group stage, how the format used to be, wasn't it? You'd have a second group stage. They got to that. And then obviously, as we're talking about now, 03, 04, the semis as well. And it was Porto and Monaco in the final, which is mad. Crazy.
Yeah.
It was just mad. And obviously, Mourinho, he'd won the UEFA Cup the year before against Celtic, hadn't he? So they were on the upward trajectory, and that was him. He got the job at Chelsea, and the rest is history, of course. But it was odd. It was odd, wasn't it? Like Monaco and Porto in the final. You just assume.
Was that was it Morientes?
Yeah, Morientes was up front for him. Yeah. Before going to Liverpool, which I think was that summer. He went in 04 to Liverpool. But yeah, Morientes was up front for Monaco. Yeah, you're right.
It's mad to think, when you look back, and I've always, when we spoke about doing this, and I was looking back the history of, the finalists, and it's so rare you get two teams that aren't the most well-known teams in these countries playing against each other. Porto, Benfica, Sporting Lisbon, they're the three biggest teams in Portugal. We all know that. But when do you ever see them in the final? Very rarely, unless it's a Europa League or UEFA Cup as it was back then. But for Porto to get into a final, especially Monaco as well. Monaco were really good, and I think they knocked out Chelsea that year. I'm sure they knocked out Chelsea that year in the semis, or it might have been the quarters. And as you say, though, Stuart, that's his Jose Mourinho's lift-off, wasn't it? But yeah, he had a solid squad in Portugal.
Look at all them players that went on to do things. Carvalho, Ferreira went to Chelsea, didn't they? He had. Those players went on, didn't they? Carvalho was arguably one of the greatest centre-backs in Premier League history as well. Yes. That gets bigger and bigger year on year, doesn't it? Of course, there's more years. We amass more years of the Premier League. It was just those players. He hit it. He hit it right. Coutinho was a good player for them as well. They had the players. They were capped for Portugal, and subsequent international teams that they played for the country. So, yeah, this is what I'm saying. People are saying don't write Villa off this season, innit? A lot of people are saying that. Brady's obviously hopeful, but I've had people come to me, non-Villa fans, saying, watch Villa. Dortmund aren't doing very well domestically. I think they're 11th now. They're still in. They're still in it. There can be a surprise, just extending off what we're saying about previous tournaments and surprises with finals and semi-finals.
Well, it's happened in the past. So you would say at some point it's going to happen again. So why not? Why not we go to a Dortmund Villa final? I know it doesn't sound exhilarating, but I bet you now it'd be better than the Liverpool Tottenham Champions League final.
It wasn't the best, was it? It wasn't the best. But
they've got into the final. We've never done. So.
This segues perfectly because you're on that season's tournament, of course. So brilliant. Well done there with that, because it brings us right in to one of the greatest comebacks in Champions League history, of course. And you selected Liverpool.
Yeah, shockingly.
I was like, you selected Liverpool, but fair play. We might be Blues, but you've selected Liverpool for your Champions League memories. And yeah, just take it away, mate.
Listen, you know what I mean? Yes, we are Blues, but credit where credit is due, Stuart. To do what they did to Barcelona in that game, and they did, didn't just win 4-0, Stuart. It was absolutely convincing 4-0. And don't forget that they had Messi's, they had the Busquets there. They had their team that's won it before. And and they had a comfortable 3-0, whole aggregate at that point, because obviously we had the aggregate, didn't we? And they were comfortable playing against Liverpool. Again, in why is their flipping ground gone up my head now?
The Nou Camp.
Thank you. Jesus, they've gone so down in my estimate since I was a kid that I only forgot about their ground name. Yeah, but they were comfortable. You think about Messi's free kick in the first leg, absolutely outstanding. Pinpoint, no one was saving that. You could have had three keepers in, and that was still going top corner. But what Liverpool did, and they did it very cunningly. And I think what stands out in that whole game is that corner. Arnold and Origi. And knowing what they were going to do, because obviously they must have practiced this, or they didn't, and they just both were on the same wavelength here. And it was just to know, right, not belting it. I see him, and we can go bang in. And And it was a great day for English football, because you're looking at Barca here. Barca was still smashing teams. Barca was still running through teams. Barca were one of the favourites to win it, which they were, because they had such a good team in their previous. But what Liverpool did at Anfield that night was incredible. It's something that, again, it's in your head, and you can visualize it as you talk about it, because it was a massive moment. It was a change. And I think, again, this is where Liverpool rose up. And I think Barcelona from this game went, all the troubles obviously.
The financial side came in, didn't it? I tell you what, Alisson had to make some saves.
Yeah, he did.
Early on, he made some big saves. You're expecting it with their attack. Messi leading the line, of course. He had to be on his game. But again, Gigi Wijnaldum, when they signed him from Newcastle, and he was beloved and all that, he was such a good player. He got a brace, of course. Origi, as you've said, from Trent Alexander's to put the seal on the game in the end with that one. But he got two as well. He got a brace, and they went on to win it, of course. I just thought Ronaldo was so good for them for a number of years.
Him and Fabinho in the middle were absolutely solid. And you don't forget, Ronaldo, when he was at Newcastle, was very much more attacking. And he played behind, well, it could have been Cisse or whoever at the time, because obviously Newcastle were up topping strikers all the bloody time. But when he was at Newcastle that season, they got relegated. He was fantastic, but he was more attacking. He come to Liverpool and he plays that more defensive role. But he was really, really good at it. But when he did go forward, you saw what you saw at Newcastle when he went forward. And I do agree. But I think him and Fabinho complemented each other in that middle of the park for Liverpool.
Definitely. Again, away goals on this. Had they conceded one early with all that pressure from Barca, I mean that
it changes
the
the
away
game.
goal. Like we don't have the away goals now. This is
Do
the
you
thing.
miss
It's
that?
huge. Do you know what? I've enjoyed this new way of them doing it though. In the same breath, I was kind of like a bit. I don't know about this because we're just so. We accustomed to. I always throw the word accustomed out there. We're accustomed to it. We're conditioned that it was away goals. But I think it. Maybe teams don't go for it as much now, and they're saying like extra time if they are level. A lot of these games are going to penalties now. Whereas if you had the away goal, if it was into the advantage of the team, I think they're going to go for it more in extra time.
Of course, yeah.
We saw a lot of penalty shootouts last week, didn't we? Across them games. So I think teams are very cautious now because it's not a thing, and then we end up with more shootouts. But I've enjoyed the tournament. I really have enjoyed it, and the VAR's a lot swifter than what it is.
I have noticed that.
So just get it. Do the same here. Then this is my thing. It is so much swifter.
Well, they're changing it, aren't they? Towards the end,
like a semi-automatic, technology that you use. Why? It's just have it the same throughout for all the countries that are using it.
No, I agree.
It's just so prolonged. It's so prolonged, but
they get it wrong.
Yeah, this is it. This is it. They still don't know when they're going into the van. They go to the van and they're faffing about still, and it's taking forever. It can kill momentum if you're in the ascendancy. Yeah. You're on top of the game, and then a game gets cut for 4 or 5 minutes. It changes it, but we'll see next season, won't we, Chris?
No, they're bringing in, isn't it? The last couple of games of this season, they're bringing in this newer one, aren't they? I'm sure they're bringing in the newer ball that can work out the touches and whatever, and who had the last touch.
Right.
And more AI. I think they're trialing it in the FA Cup final as well. I don't quote me, but I'm sure I've read this. But they're going to try out the newer version for next season, at the end of the season.
It's worked for rugby for so long the way they do it.
They do it like that, Stuart, though.
They've had it in place for so long, and I get that. But now we're getting in years and years into this VAR, and there's still mega grey areas across the board with it. It is so frustrating. And like Mike says on Holy Trinity, when you're at a game live, it just quells. You have people kicking off. You lose the crowd, especially at Goodison when we need the crowd. He said it's a buzzkill. It's a buzzkill, that is, but hopefully they'll sort it. But yeah, Champions League memories, mate. We can come back to this topic. There's so many. There's so many.
Go back to Stuart. The one that always came to, and I would love to talk about this when we come back to doing this again, is the Juventus Ajax final.
Yeah.
Amazing. Gianluca Vialli as well. God rest his soul. Fantastic striker, but he was immense for Juventus in that final.
ITV's coverage I used to love. I loved it. Brian Moore, and then Clive Tilsley, obviously more latterly. I think Brian Moore was winding down a bit. He was getting older, wasn't he? And then Clive Tilsley took the baton and ran with it after Brian Moore had been synonymous with football commentary for years. They were the voice. They were the voice of the show, your voice of your childhood, and just absolutely brilliant. Like the modern commentators just don't have what those guys had. Why Clive Tilsley's not the lead commentator for ITV's coverage is beyond me.
Yeah,
but he's doing a lot internationally for Premier League productions. You can still get him on around the world,
the American games and stuff like that. I mean,
we've spoken about commentators, haven't we, prior? But
everything. But I do agree what you mean.
It was encapsulated, the whole package. Absolutely. Times move on. Things change, styles change, and stuff like that. But yeah, they were brilliant for ITV, and I've just got a little bit of music I've used a couple of times recently.
Oh.
That will cut short as well. I've noticed this. It plays on here, and then when we go back looking at it, it cuts out 2 seconds before. I don't know why that's a thing, but yeah, sponsored by Hankook Tires, PlayStation 5. Is it Amstel or Heineken, the beer partner?
If I'm going for a beer, I should prefer an Amstel to a Heineken any day.
A bit lighter, but yeah.
But it's nicer.
Brilliant. And again, as I always say, I try and lead in with these guys. I will close out with these guys. Again, as you can see in the far right in the top corner there, Sports Social Podcast Network, who we've been for, well, since last February 2024, and with previous shows that we do in other sports, of course. Europe's largest sport podcast network, Chris, 500 partners and counting. And just, if you've got a show and you're not affiliated to a company or whatever, go with these guys. You don't pay to list your episodes. You can list as much content as you want. All they ask is that you put ads into the episodes. It's like every 15 minutes. And then, as I say, they've been absolutely brilliant, the Sports Social Podcast Network, haven't they, Chris, in closing?
No complaints, Stuart. Always been good to us. As you say, with previous podcasts, to current podcasts we've done with them, they've always been good. Have you got any problems, any questions? Laura's always been very good at answering them, as quick as possible.
Check content out on there as well. I'll get my words out. There's so many podcasts on there. People within sport, people who were in sport years ago. Again, I said about it previously. Jimmy Bullard's podcast with Fenners is on there. We're on there. Just go and have a look. There's so much on there. If you like rugby, if you like Formula One, there's so many sports, isn't there?
Yeah.
Check out on there because everyone's there. We're housed on there. If you want to see our content through there, if you're not on Spotify, Apple, and all that, you can get to us. Episode 48, Chris, next week, of course. And I'm sure we'll be back into talking about the Premier League as we get into the final couple of months now. The title race, I think, is sewn up, personally. I've heard Liverpool fans losing their heads after a couple of losses, though. They think it could be a Kevin Keegan moment from 95, 96.
I love it.
Arsenal are going to have to go undefeated. They're losing their heads. They're losing their heads. They've had a couple of losses, 12 points at this stage. Arsenal are going to have to go undefeated and probably win every single game because they've drawn 10. They've drawn 10. Their heads are going. And their heads don't need to go. I like Liverpool will win the league this year. It's just there's no question. There's no question. To me, you sound that you different on opinion.
No. I just really enjoy watching Liverpool fans' heads fall off. Unless you're an Evertonian, you get what I mean.
Liverpool fans are going mad about Baldy, who does the Anfield Agenda. He's the biggest crybaby I've ever seen. When it's going great, oh my God, it's the best thing since sliced bread. It's sunny outside and all the rest of it. Those two results, he was losing his head. Like Mark Goldbridge at Man United. Yeah, I'll call him out. When it's going great, it's good, isn't it?
Was a Nottingham Forest fan, by the way, before he was United fan.
Was he? Oh, that's news to me. Right, okay, we change allegiances, do we? Look, try being an Everton fan.
Yeah, we do.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Every year.
It's like, be the same. Get rid of Slot. I've heard that. I've heard all sorts of garbage, mate. Yeah. I was just like, this is ridiculous. But they won't lose the title. There's no way. I just can't see it. It's theirs this year. They've only lost once in the league as well.
I don't think there's anyone challenging them. And kudos to Forest and Bournemouth who've made this season in that top half absolutely amazing. And I'm talking like the season's over, but it's not. But they've maintained it. We're going into April soon, where you would have thought they would have fallen off. Bournemouth have slightly fallen off, but Forest have absolutely blown me away, and they're still in there.
A very good win for Brentford, that against Bournemouth. Very good. Brentford have been decent at times, haven't they? They've had little spells within the season, but like you say, you've got to give props to them. And Brighton hit a bit of patchy form earlier on. Hursley, we speak about these teams all the time on this show. We always give the rub to the teams that are doing fantastic and punching in some respects, but everyone down from there is in the hunt for European places as well.
And
they're all fighting out.
When you're looking at the European places, let's forget Champions League now. Let's box that off. But Europa League and the Conference League, it's so open. Because they've all been beating each other. But at the same time, they've all lost at the same time together. Do you know what I mean? They've all gone quite patchy at the same time. Where you look at where we are, and it's shocking to see the likes of Spurs and Man United so close to us, which makes no sense. But they've had poor seasons, so that's supposed to be. But when you look up, Stuart, from Palace on, it's so open.
Yeah. Palace have really hit form. Glasner, if you take the early season form out, if you go into from whenever it was, he'd be in the top 4, Glasner. Without
He's a good manager,
He came in and did a fantastic job, didn't he, last season? Straight away, very good, managed in Germany for years, didn't he? So he had that basis. It's been that way. It's been good. I think obviously the title is sewn up, but like you say, those European places, that's where the big games are going to be now. Relegation, the bottom three is the bottom three.
Yeah, I don't see any change. I don't see anyone
so bad, mate. Do you know what's funny, Chris? If Dyche was still in charge, we'd be on the same points now as them. And obviously the goal difference, I don't know what that'd be like now. That is mad. I think we'd be 17th had like Dyche not won any games. Do you know what I mean? If you did it without Moyes for the last 10, 11, which is crazy.
It baffles me. I was speaking to Brian, who's a security on the park where I work, and he's an Evertonian, and we were talking about that today. And we're just saying it's mad how Dyche was, complaining about the players. They're not doing this. And, we watched the same team day in, day out perform the way they did. Moyes comes in, and it's a different Moyes. And I must say, this is a more adult David Moyes, who's been around, got the experience everywhere he went, and he's come back a different person, more relaxed. But the outlook and the output of the team, which is exactly the same team that Dyche had, and now more so injuries to our better players. Good to see like Dwight's back.
Light training now for him, isn't it? After a lengthy time out on the sidelines.
Good to see Schmidt and Brozier on the weekend. They completely changed the game.
There's depth on the bench now. And that's not me knocking Sheriff. He's young. He's a young player. Hopefully it works out for him.
Yeah.
He wasn't just going to throw him on, was he? Regardless, Beto's had to put a lot of minutes in. Again, the chances... He's getting the chances and they're not going in now.
Reverted backwards now, hasn't he?
Again, I'm sure it'll come back, but now it's like we've got depth again, haven't we, going into this? And for every place we can get at the table, it's another £4 million of prize money. So they've got to keep going. Again, I think United and Spurs have got one eye on Europa League and winning it. So will their eye be off the ball domestically? Again, because it's an avenue into the Champions League, isn't it? Although with the coefficient thing, there's going to be 5 teams going in anyway. So I don't know how that works. If you win the Europa, they're going to be going in.
Here's the cheeky one, Stuart. I've read into this, right? Because I saw someone commenting on Twitter about this, right? Potentially now, and this is like a massive potential. So a lot of things have to move for all this to happen. But you could physically look at 7 teams from the Premier League, if all sort of win their competitions in Europe next season, and the last 2 could be like not where we are, but just a bit higher up. Say 14th, 13th, around that area. That's where it could drop.
What the hell?
You know what I mean? Because obviously you say about the coefficient, which you get.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But because obviously we have so many teams in this in Europe. If they're to win it where they are, obviously it drops them, doesn't it? But then it can't drop to the next team if they're already in the competition. It's so many roads to go across. But you know what I mean? If we had a good finish, and I'm not saying this could happen, but the way things are at the moment, you never know. But you could end up in Europe.
He's averaging 1.7 points, isn't he? We've had a lot of draws. Again, I thought the West Ham game had gone because we weren't particularly good second half. We weren't particularly good second half, were we? And it's just that fight. Jake O'Brien, again, we've spoken about him. Like two goals. Yeah, just the whole time he was sat there, and we knew there was a player in there.
Yeah.
The goals for Leon, which we've spoken about, but it's going to be interesting. The tail end's going to be interesting. Obviously, we'll be talking about it next week. We always preview the Premier League. Yeah. Oh, my days. Yes. And then Arsenal. So they're coming thick and fast. But yeah, this has been Football Then and Now, episode 47. We are a part of the Sports Social Podcast Network, as we've said earlier. Thank you to Rox Ferry out of Australia for the intro music. It's bleached by them. It's available on Spotify, Apple, all streaming apps, YouTube, everything. You can get them everywhere. Rox Ferry, fantastic band, absolutely brilliant. And yeah, we will see you for episode 48, Chris, where we'll preview the Premier League and we'll have all the other good stuff intermingled and mixed in the pot, won't we?
Gospel as always, Stuart.
Perfect.
Well, yeah.
Football Then and Now, a fun look at football nostalgia and the modern game intertwined. Join us.